Who are these people?
Part of the reason they're going to lose is this kind of shit right here.
Right.
So Biden's weed pardons won't release anyone from prison, and it's a ploy for votes. And this kind of ties us back to the first article you said you brought today, where it mentioned what did it say, that the politicians don't have any actual, it's all celebrity stuff.
Ideology. They have
Yeah.
no ideology, And this as an aside,
Just
and I'm not sure if this
empty
person is a bot
performative.
or not, but I saw a guy, again, not sure if he's a bot, but he was like, in regards to John Fetterman, I don't think he lives in Pennsylvania, but he said, I support, Fetterman, even like his ideology, is shifted to the right. I can almost argue it never shifted. It was just always been to the right. But I think, but he was like, I'm going to vote for him on account of ableism, meaning in the sense how he had the stroke and just being like, that will mean a lot to people who are able, and all that kind of stuff. And that reflects on me. And I'm like, dude, you don't vote for people for being able to do well. The fact that they have the ideology, should kind of dictate to you how they're going to be able to do the job. I don't want a person who's able to do the job and they're shit. I want someone who's able to do the job who's actually good. So the idea that people are and I think it's been interesting to see online how people are just I think, people are just kind of freaking out because I think people are now kind of realizing what we and other people in independent media have been saying for months, we're kind of fucked in the midterms, and all these candidates are actually not the people that they say they are. I think it's a mask off moment for many people, but they're still kind of holding on to the idea of oh, I'm going to vote Democrat, or in some cases, I'm going to vote for Republican in this kind of idea. And it's just kind of no talk of third parties, no talk of not voting, no talk of direct action, no talk of mutual aid, none of that. It's just oh, we're just going to continue doing in the very thing that in some cases, people are trying to avoid people doing. I think it's just ridiculous. But
So,
anyway,
yeah, ploy for votes,
ridiculous.
Biden's weed pardon. Yeah, I mean, oh, so this is from Daniel Werst over at Left Voice. And again, I wanted to wait to talk about this till some more information actually came out. So I figured we'll get into it. So on October 6th, President Joe Biden announced that he is pardoning people convicted of simple possession of marijuana by the federal court system, and probably also people convicted by the District of Columbia court system. Right? So the Biden administration presents this as a response to the obvious excesses and cruelties of the United States' half-century war on drugs, and a serious step in reforming discriminatory treatment of Black and Latinx people by the police and the courts. But a White House spokesperson immediately admitted there are no individuals currently in federal prison solely for simple possession of marijuana. Biden is not actually releasing a single prisoner, even though the United States currently holds 1.9 million people behind bars. This is the largest rate of incarceration in the world. The U.S. holds 639 prisoners per 100,000 population, double the rate of 330 per 100,000 in Russia. Right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
It's if you, yeah. And I don't know weed like that, but if it was a simple position, that wouldn't be a federal offense.
no. It's never convicted that way.
Right. That maybe on a local level, sure, or state, but never at the federal. So it's oh, you're muted, I think.
No. How about now?
Okay. Oh, okay.
I was just saying yeah, it's never convicted that way.
Right.
So, But anyway, Biden is expunging the criminal records of only 6,500 people convicted for weed possession by federal courts over the past 30 years, and perhaps a few thousand people convicted by D.C. courts. His reform is merely to remove a form of legal job and benefits discrimination from perhaps 10,000 people previously jailed and released over a product that half of the U.S. population and at least 2 presidents have consumed, and perhaps 3 in 10 American young adults use regularly.
I would argue probably
more. Right. That's who's willing to admit it to a poll.
Look, here's the thing. If I live in DC, if you want to see some sketchy shit, hang out around the White House area around, I'll say like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. Like
we'll say 4:20 in the morning, just
maybe, but like,
you know,
and you would think that everyone is fast asleep.
No.
There's like, you know, interns walking out, like, you know, from, you know, different hotels that are in that general vicinity, you know, like there's some walks of shame, you know, like this is not like, you know, like I've lived here now for 5 years, so I kind of know the lay of the land now, just as a local, you know, not obviously not in government, but like, you know, the mentality is like you do what you need to do to present yourself in public as far as being a professional or whatever, but like when doors are closed or during certain parties, like people just go off. Like, and that's just normal people here. So you can imagine like the kind of inverse shit that happens with our politicians and government officials behind closed doors when cameras are not on. So,
well,
you know.
So Biden announced his pardon of no one 33 days before. That's a weird way to phrase that. I think it's like not one, but 33 days before the congressional election, I think. As an open bid for votes, the New York Times wrote that the announcement could give Democrats a boost in the upcoming midterm elections, especially among young people, liberals, and minority communities. So the NAACP president, Derek Johnson, immediately tweeted, "We applaud President Biden. Correcting unequal treatment, including marijuana reform, has been a priority issue for the NAACP for decades. This is dishonest. Biden has expanded the police and prison industrial complex throughout his 5 decades as a national politician. He is one of the authors of the racist mass incarceration, and a pardon that frees 0 prisoners doesn't change that. This statement from the NAACP shows how NGOs can work overtime to shore up and repair failing public faith in ruling class institutions. It's as if they are saying, hey, the Democratic Party really does understand regular people's problems. Trust us." So Biden, after 50 years of being a drug war leader, now announcing that there's a small group of people arrested and jailed who were treated unfairly, but a ruling class politician, specifically a man whose son was, by his own account, addicted to crack and was permitted the benefit of going to rehab, not jail, 15 times.
Right.
Acts as the arbiter of who is a deserving and who is an undeserving convict.
You know what? And out of all the things that Biden has done, and I hate that it's not talked about enough, is this. The idea of class in this situation is that, and I saw when he did his interview with Jake Tapper, and I think Jake Tapper asked him, you know, I think in regards to, I forgot the situation that Hunter was in, or being alleged for. And basically Biden was like, hey, he's a good man, you know, like he made mistakes, you know, but he cleaned himself up, you know, like he went to rehab, all of that. And it's kind of like, and you know what? Like, if Biden really cared, or if Biden had any heart in him, or whatever is left in that body of his, I wish he could have used that in a way to kind of connect to people and being like, look, my son struggled with drugs, you know? I understand, especially back then, it was a hard time, for many of you. We all struggled. Like, we all have our vices that we all struggle with. In response to that, let me do whatever, If he did that, like that one thing, you know, like he'll probably be the most popular president in this country. I would sure be by far. But because his son got to go to rehab, and then people in my community had to go to jail for doing less, I think just the cognitive dissonance there is just like, it's just really upsetting, and it angers me. And the fact that people don't necessarily make that connection, and don't think this is very much a class issue in addition to race, like, I just find very upsetting.
Well, speaking of, just as the ruling class have insisted, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the police. Sounds familiar? Like nothing will fundamentally change.
Who are these people?
You know that lady?
There's nothing fundamentally wrong with the police for them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. We are seeing a minimal and pretentious drug pardon that doesn't speak to several burning questions. One, the invention of victimless crimes, the criminalization of mental health and social crises, and the fact that police are sent to patrol and shake down working class black and brown communities, while upper class people have always been able to indulge in cocaine, prostitution, and other vices, secure in the knowledge that the system is uninterested in their activities. Truth?
Yeah. Truth.
The marijuana reform mirrors the cosmetic prison reform Biden announced on taking office in January 2021. He declared he would phase out use of private corporate-run prisons by the federal prison system. Biden called this a step towards ending institutional racism, while hoping people wouldn't focus on the fact that private prisons held only 9% of federal prisoners, and federal prisons held only 11% of the U.S. prison population. So that he was speaking about only 1% or so of prisoners. The Biden administration continues to use private prison companies to operate most of the jails in which ICE holds immigrants awaiting deportation, regularly employing unpaid forced labor. Yay. That slavery amendment gets a little weird, don't it?
In here?
Right. Where's she?
Yeah.
Where's those fake tears at? The policy.
By the way, someone had to tell me this. That picture, that famous picture where she was crying at the border. I think she wasn't even I think she was campaigning at that time when that picture was taken. She wasn't even in office yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just wanted to say that, but yeah.
No, you'll have more to say on this one. The policy also mirrors Biden's August surprise announcement of $10,000 to $20,000 student debt reduction and doing the absolute minimum to address a huge problem right before the coming election. Along with the pardon, Biden is ordering his Departments of Health and Human Service and Justice, specifically the DEA, to begin a bureaucratic review to consider shifting marijuana from Schedule 1, the worst category of drugs, down to Schedule 2. This would not legalize or decriminalize marijuana federally. I would like to repeat, this would not legalize or decriminalize marijuana federally, but it might pave the way for less severe federal action over the drug. Many people point out that the Schedule 1 list includes heroin. The Washington Post quotes Director of Reform NGO Coalition for Cannabis Policy, Education, and Regulation, suggesting it may take the administration up to 2 years to actually take this tiny step, which would be accomplished in a minute and is far short of legalization. 68% of the U.S. population supports actually legalizing marijuana and in turn decriminalizing it. I'm sure is way up there.
Yeah.
So for those, particular commentators who would like to just completely give any bone to Biden when he gives you barely a crumb, 1% of 1% of a crumb in this case, that won't happen. He's going to dole out that crumb to you in 2 years when there's still people in prison now. Like, am I wrong?
Which is why, going back to what I was saying before, the best case scenario for them, I think Democrats, is having, Republicans take over the Senate and then keeping the House, because shit. It gives Biden to say, like, they're going to be, in a lame duck period. So you'll give him the cover, or probably even worse, heading into 2024, like a complete red wave. I don't think that's going to happen, but we're not ruling that out either. But but I feel a lot of what they're doing is on purpose. It is on purpose, is to force people just to be disenfranchised, not to come out and vote. I mean, people don't really come out in the midterms anyway to vote anyway, but I think especially given we're still in a pandemic, people are not making any more money. If anything, they're making less money given inflation. People can't pay their bills, people are still dying. People are not going to come out and vote for this shit. And then it just gives Democrats a cover to say, oh, we tried to give you something. Actually, what will really be the gag is if they hold control, or if anything, they gain seats in the Senate, or or in the House, and then actually being able to be like, oh, we can actually do shit. Now we need to think of excuses as to why we can't. So,
well, and specifically, I mean, DC, 19 states and DC have already legalized recreational weed use over the last decade. Biden acknowledged that while similar portions of white and black people use marijuana, police for years arrested black people for possessing of the drug at nearly 4 times the rate for whites. We have to question if it's legal to sell weed in 19 states and 68% of the public thinks the drug should be freely available. Why is anyone in state or federal prison anywhere for selling cannabis to consenting adults? Biden is not pardoning anyone convicted for selling pot. Furthermore, isn't it a bit convenient and hypocritical to admit that there is a rampant racism in arrests for possession, but to intentionally ignore the same phenomenon in policing of alleged drug dealers? And does admitting police focus on black people who are carrying out pot possession arrests, which totaled around 700,000 per year in 2000 to 2010, implying that police can be trusted to make other categories of arrests in a non-racist fashion? So, in August, Biden publicly trumpeted a plan for $37 billion in new federal funding for police departments. I'll read that again. Biden publicly trumpeted a plan for $37 billion in new federal funding for police departments. 1/3 of that money is used to hire 100,000 new cops. So for the people who think that funding is just going to cops, just 1/3 of that. Right? The administration calls this bill the Safer America Plan. Just as Biden pushed the punitive and racist 1994 crime bill, he fully supported criminalization of marijuana users from 1974 to 2019. Today, he is opportunistically using an expungement for a small number of drug war victims he himself targeted to score political points, without actually reversing the harm of the laws and actions he has supported, and while continuing to expand police forces. So, a White House spokesperson promised that Biden is urging all governors to now pardon the many tens of thousands of people jailed for weed by states, but there is no evidence this is anything more than empty words. Biden has placed no political pressure on Democratic governors to do this. Additionally, cops are hired by $13 billion in specific federal money to local governments, but this plan for restorative justice on pot possession is based on verbal suggestions.
Yeah.
The marijuana pardon is not the only way Biden is trying to put his Safer America police expansion into more attractive wrapping paper. After a year and a half of inaction on the murder of Breonna Taylor by Louisville police, the most infamous unaddressed racist crime by police in public consciousness, the Biden DOJ obtained federal indictments against one of the 3 cops who shot at Taylor and 2 others who lied in the search warrant process. Those indictments were announced 2 weeks after Biden's first Safer America plan press release boasted that he had both funded the police and improved police accountability. The Biden administration continues to bring charges against cops and many other well-known murder cases. The Democrats give us mass police hiring and continue mass incarceration before elections. They make pretenses of liberalism that are hypocritically accepted by the capitalist media from the New York Times down and opportunistically used by Democratic NGOs. There is no reason to support either U.S. Capitalist Party. Marx and Engels were right when they insisted that in the absence of an oppositional working class party, especially in a strong imperialist country, working people are put into a mental, cultural, and political straitjacket. We are hegemonically dragged around by our rulers. All drug use should be decriminalized. Addiction and self-harm should be treated as physical, mental, and social health problems. With a high-quality, single, free public health care system, the act of simply selling unadulterated drugs to willing adult buyers should not in itself be treated as a crime. Drug use can be reshaped, but it cannot be halted. For this reason, we should have compassionate, controlled use places allowing users of hard drugs to consume them with pharmacists, ensuring there will be no spiked fentanyl killing people and nurses preventing overdoses. There should also be government support for self-help and recovery like 12-step programs. All this would help people a million times more than the drug war ever has. Our rulers are hypocrites, and they pose for votes. We need socialism so that all people can take charge of their own safety and health, and so that a 50-year personal career of privilege and nonsense like Biden's will stop being the normal mode of governing people's lives and indeed become impossible freedom for everyone who is unjustly imprisoned, prison or real jobs as appropriate for bourgeoisie politicians.
And the
Closing
moral of the
thoughts.
story is, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to capitalism versus socialism, the question is, should the power stay to the top? Should the power stay to the elites, or should the power be for everybody?
I mean, I'm going to say everybody. I would like it to be everybody, except for that guy. That guy shouldn't have the power. And you know who I mean. Yeah, I mean, it just feels silly that people immediately, without questioning, gave Biden credit when they thought he needed it.
Right. I mean, it was just, yeah, it was, but they were at the same time, in the same breath, they were like, oh, he needs to do more.
Yeah.
You know, but not, as I say to people, the devil's in the details. Like anything that looks good or what seems to be good is usually not. There's always a catch.
Just assume there's a catch. Just assume.
Yeah. Or it's not as good as you think it is.
Yeah.
You know, like, so, but I mean, again, I don't know. I just feel like we need to report on feel good stories every once in a while because
I know, right?
to talk about all this. I mean, it makes sense given that we're midterm season now. Maybe things might actually get better, after midterms once people get really pissed, um, but I will say, I just feel like, as I shared with Warren, Extra Bullia in the chat on Twitter the other day, I feel like, as in Star Wars, as they say, I sense a disturbance in the Force. I feel like people are starting to get more mad. People are starting to call out politicians more. Like within the last few weeks, we've seen people call out AOC, Jamal Bowman,
Elizabeth Warren,
Presley,
Jayapal.
Yeah, I feel there's this beginning of a wave which I'm cautiously optimistic for, that people have just had enough and are seeing the bullshit and are getting tired of it and are speaking out about it. And so I just say to those people, keep it up. Obviously don't do anything where, you're crazy or you're going to hurt people or anything like that, but definitely use your words. And
use your words.
Use your words, as I say to my kids, use your words, but but speak in truth, don't be polite, but speak in truth, whatever you do say, because, because we need to see more of that. And I think especially in the last couple of weeks, we're seeing a lot of more of that direct action and openly calling out these politicians in public as far as the shit that they're doing, that they're not being accountable for, that we need to see a lot more of, at least a minimum if it's online. But again, the fact that even the squad having to write well, you can argue, which is another thing, they sound that letter for months, but you can make the argument, the small piece of victory is that they probably wouldn't have done it if they hadn't been bitched out by people on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it made enough noise to the point where it became viral that it couldn't be ignored anymore not to do something.
Look, listen. Poppy, why you stupid? Listen. Sorry, what?
But, I mean, that being said, I hope in what we've been seeing in the last month now, few weeks, that
more of that
a turn of people who are beginning. Honestly, we should have been doing this post George Floyd, but I feel like hopefully there's more of a rising of that happening again. So we can only hope, but
well,
but we support it, and we encourage all of you to do that way you can.
Yeah,
I started bringing them my fucking reefer.
I mean, if only Joey Diaz was doing that to people, because me personally,
because I was tired of paying for weed.
I'm really tired of paying for weed.